On this episode, we talk about Seattle's crushing loss after a great start to Nashville. Are they feeling the pressure of being in a playoff hunt? And after such an emotionally difficult loss, where do they go from here? Coming up on Locked On Kraken.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm Zaiem alongside Glenn Dreyfuss, and we are with Davy Jones Locker Room, where we cover the Seattle Torrent and the Seattle Kraken. And welcome to Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Last night, the Kraken, after a couple of really bad losses, they were at home against Nashville, a get-right game, and boy, did they look like they got right. It was the best first period that I can remember the Kraken playing ever. I looked at my expected goals model, and it was the third best first period in franchise history in terms of expected goal differential. They had 19 shots on goal, Glenn. They were up 2-0. It could have been 4-0. There were a couple of almost chances. There was a hit the post, and UC Soros, made a crazy save. This is great, right? Then it all fell apart in the second period. They ended the second period down 3-2, and that's how the game essentially ended. Nashville threw in an empty netter at the end. I have so much to say, but Glenn, why don't I let you get to start first, and then I can start digging into the numbers and the rantings.
Yeah. Well, to dramatize last night's game, let me invite you all in to another episode of Seattle Kraken Theater of the Mind. The Kraken are running a sprint. See, they're running a sprint. And man, they are leaving Nashville in the dust. 19 first period shots. This is a team that averages 25 shots a whole game, which is third lowest in the whole league. They put one in, Capo Caco. They put another in, Matty Beniers. They hit two more posts besides, which don't even count as one of the 19 shots on goal in the period. They come to the end of the period. They think they're breaking the tape. And then they get a tap on the shoulder. Excuse me, you do know there are two more laps. And the Kraken are going, there are two more. What? Two more laps? And they're done. They don't score for the last 50 minutes and 14 seconds of the game. In the third period, they go more than 12 minutes without one shot on goal. The Kraken, according to their coach, Lane Lambert, actually said they looked tired at the end. It's like they used their booster rockets and they couldn't get far enough ahead to keep Nashville from coming back.
Third most shots on goal in franchise history with 45. Incidentally, I looked at the 10 highest shot count games because I know that the Kraken have lost the previous two that had higher shot count totals, including the franchise record where they had 50 against San Jose and they scored one goal. In fact, in the 10 games where the Kraken have generated the 41 shots or more, which is their top 10, they're 2-8. Now, you might think, well, maybe there's an anti-correlation here. For example, in the NFL, if a quarterback throws for 400 yards or more, they're usually losing those games. It's why they're throwing that much. And so you might think, okay, well, a team that puts a lot of shots on goal, it's because they're behind, they're losing. And so there is an anti-correlation. And so actually the game conditions that are created when a team puts a lot of shots on goal, the Carolina Hurricanes accepted, maybe that's disadvantageous. That's not true. So this is just a real simple chart, and I will describe this for our audio listeners. This is just the top line is just the NHL win rate by shots. I bucketed it. And you can see as the shots go up, there's a slight increase in win probability. The bottom line is the Kraken, and you can see it just plummets by the buckets. The higher the shot total, the worse the Kraken seem to do. This is such a Kraken stat. It reminds me of, there was a baseball player, and I cannot remember who this was, but this was quite a while ago. But in spring training, he was like really upset. I'm like, oh, why are you upset? He's like, oh man, I'm hitting a lot of home runs in spring training, and I'm using up all my home runs. He wanted to save some for the regular season, and his bat was using them all up. And that's how I felt when watching this game. It's like, oh, the Kraken used up all their shots in the first period, and now they're like, all right, well, we're done.
You know what I thought after the first period, Zaiem? I thought this is exactly what Lane Lambert needs to bottle. He needs to clip this recording of the first period and play it. Anytime he needs to explain why the Kraken need to put more shots on goal. I mean, Matty Benier's shot from the goal line by the near boards had to be pinpoint perfect, but it was. You shoot from a place you almost never score, but it went in. The Kraken had multiple other chances. This period was a perfect example of why you throw pucks at the net, good things happen. But they didn't keep happening.
Something that Maddie said, and also that Lane Lambert echoed, was that if they played every game like this, they would win most of their games, or they would win more often than not. And I have to agree. It was essentially a 1-goal game. It was an empty net goal. It's still a 1-goal game. Hockey has a lot of RNG, a lot of random number generator added into it. And the Kraken, if they generate that kind of shot volume and shot quality, let's say they did that every night, I mean, this team is dominating, right? Now it's really hard to play the way they did, which is why we're talking about franchise records, and this is the third most shots, right? But I think because the effort was there, but the focus was not there in the second period. It was defensive lapses, but it was not like we had in previous games, to me, where they didn't have the energy and they were just slow to everything, and they're getting outworked and they look like the slower team. The Kraken were the considerably faster team last night, and part of that is just Nashville is not a fast team at all. But part of that is also the Kraken had energy. They had their legs. Now, I know that Lane Lambert said that they were getting tired, but even so, they still looked like the fresher team. I did not think the effort was the issue last night. I think it was focus, and Maddie said, he alluded to that. And I think that Lane Lambert does not tell untruths, is now my sense after almost a full season, or I guess 3/4 of a season. He will not say, he'll withhold information, of course, but I don't think he will say something he doesn't believe just to shape a media narrative or to get them off the back. So when somebody says, hey, Maddie believes that if you played this way every game, that you would win more often than not, and he says, yeah, I agree with that, I believe him. So while it is very easy to react strongly to this very disappointing game, it is just one game, and I think that the sky is not falling. I was a real negative Nancy yesterday, so I'm turning a new leaf. I'm going to try to, and I'm going to try to bring a little bit more of an optimistic perspective, but it's also without being intellectually dishonest. So we'll see how that goes. But coming up next, are the Kraken feeling the pressure of a playoff chase, a position they haven't been in a couple of years? Lane Lambert made a comment about that, and we're going to talk about that next. There is nothing like being in an NBA arena with the crowd and the energy and the moment, and getting tickets, though, has not always been so simple, and that's why Game Time has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without the hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs, with the fans. I'm going to a hockey analytics conference in Denver at the end of this month, and I wanted to go to a home Denver Nuggets game. I wanted to watch them against the Warriors. I want to see Nikola Jokic and Steph Curry, so I pulled up the Game Time app. I picked the game that I wanted to go to, and I had tickets within minutes. I had the all-in price up front with no surprise fees at checkout, and I could see the view from the seat, which made buying easy. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today, and remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. You've done rooftops and you've chased every happy hour, but how about one that's literally above it all? After 4 p.m., the Space Needles Pint and a Pie takes happy hour sky high, and just for $35 per person, you get entry, your choice of a sweet or savory tip-top pie, and a pint of beer, wine, or a non-alcoholic drink. Whether you're pre-gaming for the Kraken, warming up for Climate Pledge, or just here for the views, this is your night on another level. Pint and a Pie. Limited time offer, 21 plus only, minimum to purchase. Tickets at spaceneedle.com. If you've been thinking about joining the Everydayer Club, now is the time. Again, you get ad-free shows and access to our group chat on Discord. And if you're signed up before the NCAA tournament tips off, you can get into our Everydayer Club bracket pool on Discord for a chance to win Locked On merch. It should be a lot of fun. Right now, you can use code MARCH to get your first month free. Head to lockedonpodcast.com/everydayer or click the link in the show notes. Glenn, last night, Lane Lambert said something that you called out that you found pretty interesting about, are the Kraken facing playoff pressure? So I'm going to play that clip. Question asked by our friend over at Sound of Hockey, Darren Brown.
You said a few minutes ago that you thought it's starting to show that this team hasn't been in this position for a couple of years. Just wondering if you can expand on that a little bit. Is that a mental thing? Is that a physical thing? Like, what do you think that is?
I think it's a mental thing. I think certainly, if you and we've got to get over that mental hump and understand, and instead of backing off potentially when we have a lead, keep going, build on that lead. And it's just something that we talk about, we'll continue to work on, and it's a learning process. But at the same time, we've got a lot of hockey left here, and I don't want to lose sight of that.
Now, Glenn, you said to me you thought maybe there was you wanted some to push back on that, and thought maybe that was there was a little bit of hoo-ha in there. Is that a fair characterization?
Well, I'm not familiar with those technical terms, but I'll assume you're saying I don't quite agree. And on that, you are correct, sir.
Okay.
Now, I can't buy that the reason for their poor play is feeling playoff pressure. Or if they are, I can't understand why they are. And here's why. Jordan Eberle is 35 years old, the captain. He's a 16-year veteran. Philip Grubauer, 34, a 14-year veteran. Adam Larson, 33, a 15-year veteran. Jamie Alexiak, also 33, a 14-year veteran. Freddie Gaudreau, 32, a 9-year veteran. Vince Dunn, 29, he's won a Stanley Cup. Brandon Montour, 31, he's won a Stanley Cup. Chandler Stevenson, 31. He's won 2 Stanley Cups. And I'm not even including the 33-year-old Jaden Schwartz, who is injured. He's won a cup. There's enough veteran presence, enough players who have been there and done that, that there is no reason to believe that playing Nashville on a Tuesday night should be such a reason to clench. And if they are having a problem sitting back. All it takes is the coaching staff to say just what Lane Lambert said. Don't sit back. Go.
There is, however, a big difference between knowing the lesson and internalizing and implying it. So I have never been a professional athlete, and I can only speculate what that environment is like for them. But one thing that I have done, and it's the closest analogy or the closest analog that I have to playing in a high level and competitive environment, is playing in big money poker games in poker tournaments at the World Series of Poker with the best players in the world. That is an environment that I have spent a lot of time in, and I spent tens of thousands of hours at the poker table. It is very deeply internalized that when it's appropriate to bluff, that you should bluff. There's a mathematical reason for it. But what happens is sometimes when you get caught bluffing, and it's correct to bluff, even if because you're supposed to get caught bluffing a certain percentage of the time, right? If you never get caught bluffing, you're not bluffing enough. But you bluff, you get called, okay, well, that's fine. But I made the right decision, that's okay. And then you do it again, and you get called, and like, okay, well, that's fine. Well, I made the right decision, but that's okay. And it happens 3 or 4 times in a row. Now that 5th time comes up, all your work, all of your experience, all of your tens of thousands of hours, that bluffing in this spot is the correct thing to do. And I can tell you, Glenn, it is so hard to do it because even though intellectually you know this is the right thing to do, you have this emotional cruft. Now, when I'm sitting there at the table, I have the luxury of sitting for 30 seconds, 45 seconds, a minute before making my decision. Hockey players have a quarter of a second to make these decisions. So I don't think it's as easy as, well, the hockey players know not to sit back and they know to keep the pressure on. But if they make a mistake in doing so, the puck goes the other way. And now you had a defensive breakdown, which is the whole antithesis of the Lane Lambert philosophy. Experience obviously matters and it's important, but I do believe that, especially because it's been a few years since these players have been in the playoffs, that collectively as a team, especially with the younger players or players who haven't had as much playoff experience, it doesn't have to be the entire team that's playing collectively poorly to have a poor result. If you have one poor line, right, or one defenseman who keeps making mistakes on the ice and keeps giving up goals, and their name is not exactly but close to Ryden Evers, as an example.
Okay, let me stop you there for a second, because you made a good point about younger players. But to buttress my argument, and no one loves me a good buttress argument better than me. I can think of precious few people in the whole world who love buttress arguments more than me.
It's the first thing I think of whenever I see you.
You know who's playing with the most energy? Like they're not scared of nothing? Like they have no pucks to give? The so-called fourth line. Ben Myers, age 27, 113 total NHL games. Jacob Melanson, age 22, 29 games. Ryan Winterton, also age 2, 49, or rather 79 career NHL games. The veterans on the Kraken should take their lead from these 3 guys who are playing with joyful abandon.
That's a really good point. They have been the most consistent line in terms of energy and effort. It's just overall, I think the effort was not the issue last night. It was the focus. And that is, to me, much more forgivable and also seems much more correctable. So we are going to talk about, where do the Kraken go from here? Is the season over? Are they finished? Or is there reason for optimism? I'm going to give you a little bit of both coming up. Spring is a natural reset point, and if there's one thing that can quietly cost businesses money, it's messy communication. Missed calls, scattered texts, no clear thread of who said what, and that's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Quo, the smarter way to run your business communications. Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2 with over 3,000 reviews, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses. It lets your entire team share one business number so you never miss a call, text, or opportunity. Part I love is everything lives in one clean thread. So you have all your calls, your texts, and voicemails are all in one place. It makes your business feel more organized and responsive. Make this the season no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo free and get $20 or 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedonNHL. That's 20% off your first 6 months. That's quo.com/lockedonNHL. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers.
Zaiem, I have to break in here. In the last segment, you used the word cruft. Now, if I'm playing Scrabble, I'm challenging that. Is that a word?
I'm pretty sure it's a word. It's part of my lexicon. So if it's not, then I'm gonna make it a word.
Well, there's a lot of words I don't know. So anyway, please proceed.
Well, what I want to proceed about is how did the Kraken proceed? Good news last night. Okay, the Kraken, they lost. But everybody else who is fighting for a playoff spot also seems to not want it. Kraken are holding on to the playoff spot, but is the season over? Are they done? On yesterday's show, I know I brought a lot of pessimism about the Kraken's prospects of making the playoffs.
You brought realism.
I know. I felt bad though because I was bummed people out on the press bridge. Jeff Baker, who was on our show a couple weeks ago, it's a really great interview. You should check it out if you haven't. I could tell I was bringing him down. Like he was not happy. But the good news is, no, the season's not over. They can fix what's going on. They have the formula. They have the blueprint. I think it's going to be hard to execute on that blueprint, but they know what to do. And the thing that they want to do is go back to your basics and play strong, defensive, focused hockey with good, strong goaltending behind. I guess we didn't talk about it on the show because we didn't have a show back then, but I remember having a conversation with you early in the season saying, is this style of hockey mentally exhausting as the season wears on? So you have the physical exhaustion, but also keeping that mental focus is equally important, because if you have a defensive lapse and then you end up puck watching for even a shift, well, that's how you end up with the puck in the back of the net, and it's what happened last night.
Well, there were some bright lights last night. First, I want to tell everyone cruft is a word. It's a jargon word for anything that is left over, redundant, or getting in the way. So I lose that challenge.
Okay.
But as to the bright lights, Ellie Tolvanen, the ex-Predator, listen to this stat line. 5 shots, 5 blocks, 6 hits. You're going to win a lot of games with performances like that. And Freddie Gaudreau led the team with 7 shots. He had 4 on 1 Kraken power play, the only power play the Kraken had last night. And at least 3 of those I would qualify as high danger chances. In fact, every Kraken skater against Nashville had a shot on goal, save 1. And you've mentioned his name earlier, Riker Evans. Well, Riker Evans did make a pivotal play. He slid into the Nashville goalie, UC Soros, which wiped out a Shane Wright goal. So, but everybody else had a shot on goal. It wasn't a bad performance. It just had a bad result.
Hey, by the way, do you know why there was no penalty called on Riker Evans? So Riker Evans bowls into the goalie. Shane Wright scores. They don't even blow the horn. The crowd, they cheer, but then the ref immediately waves it off. Fine, no problem. I know there was some question of whether Riker Evans was tripped, but okay, it's goaltender interference, no goal. But then why is there no penalty for goaltender interference? It should have been a penalty on Riker Evans, right?
He didn't fall and trip all on his own. Like they talk about in football, the grass monster or the yard line
marker. Turf monster. Yeah.
Turf monster. He didn't fall prey to the ice monster. And if he was tripped, and that's what caused him to fall into Soros, then the goal should have counted.
Or at least a tripping penalty should be called on Nashville. I mean, it's just weird to have a player who may or may not have been tripped, and then he commits goaltender interference, and either he was tripped or he committed goaltender interference. A penalty occurred on that play. I don't understand why a penalty wasn't called, and then Nashville scored like immediately after. So it was like a puck don't lie, like a virtual power play. They didn't actually call Riker Evans for goaltender interference, but in our hearts, we are honoring the power play that wasn't by allowing a goal, which I thought was a really classy tribute by Lane Lambert. He's a classy guy, Glenn.
I'm tearing up. Oh gosh, that was so eloquent. Please continue.
Yeah, and it's a very special episode of Locked On Kraken. One thing I found interesting is looking at the remaining strength of schedule. So there is a big disparity here. On Tankathon, you have just the remaining strength of schedule based on the record of the opponents. And Seattle has the 17th hardest schedule, but you will notice for our audio listeners, I will explain that Edmonton, Nashville, Vegas, Utah, San Jose, Anaheim, and Los Angeles all have weaker schedules remaining than Seattle. 17th, okay, that's okay. Yeah, it's not great that these teams below them have easier schedules, but okay, that's manageable. Now, one of the things that Dom Lucian, his model at The Athletic, does is it incorporates the strength of the team based on their expected goals or game score. I'm not exactly sure his methodology. So I went ahead and I just created my own and verified. And my model lines up pretty closely with Dom's. I assume we're using similar philosophy or inputs. But according to expected goals differential and the actual quality of opponent faced, the Kraken have the third hardest remaining schedule. And in the top 12 teams on this graphic, you're not seeing any of the teams that the Kraken are competing with. In fact, they're all at the very bottom. The Kraken have a secretly tough schedule because they're playing against teams that have gotten pretty unlucky and are stronger than what their record indicates, at least according to how teams are generating both shot quality and shot quantity. I think that's a big component of why these models have the Kraken so low, is that, yeah, they're in a good playoff spot, or they're in a playoff spot, or they're close to a playoff spot, but they're really close to all these other teams. And all these other teams, if you use either using advanced metrics by quality of opponent or just simply how good was the opponent based on their record to date, the Kraken have a considerably more difficult schedule than the teams are chasing. So it is going to be a tough uphill battle.
I thought you were going to bring the optimism.
Oh, I was going to bring optimism. Okay. All right. The optimism is this. all models are wrong. Some models are useful. There's a ton of error in hockey prediction models. And anyone who tells you that they have a super accurate model that can predict with 80% accuracy is lying to you.
Hey, that's why they play the games, right?
That's why they play the games. Also, if you're giving the Kraken a 20% chance of making the playoffs, well, 20% is far from zero. It will
So
happen.
you're
1 out
saying
of
there's
5.
a chance.
And yeah, 1 out of 5 chance. 1 out of 5 is fine. If 1 out of 5 planes crashed, you would never fly.
I would just fly on the other 4, Zaiem.
Yeah, that's well, yeah. So every 5th flight, you skip, and you're like, oh, well, this one's gonna crash, and so the Kraken, they have a plan, they have a path forward. They might get a boost from Bobby McMahon. I don't think he's going to be the savior. We also don't know what his status is. It is not a given that he's going to play tomorrow against Colorado.
Yeah.
Sometimes these things can take weeks. So I know Daniel Sprong, took a long time. Arturi Lehkonen, when he was traded to Colorado a few years ago, it took like a couple weeks to get that cleared. So it's a really weird situation because some players have been cleared and then other players aren't. And did they play in the U.S. most recently? Is that a factor? I don't know. But regardless, Bobby McMahon, maybe he'll be available, maybe not. We don't know.
Zaiem,
But
it's really confusing to me because he's allowed to practice. I mean, practicing with the team is working.
Yeah. I don't get it. What a weird, bizarre situation, and not even the one that the NHL has manufactured for once. But there's a path, and they have a really good coach. And a good coach can overcome a lot of flaws, a lot of deficiencies. The Kraken, by no means, are a perfect team. They have a lot of issues, but the thing that Lane Lambert does is he understands his team very well, and he understands how to structure his team to play to his its team strengths, and to go away from their weaknesses. Now, other teams are going to try to force them into their weaknesses, but Lane Lambert has a plan in a way that no Kraken coach to date, in my mind, has had. And I will finish on this note. In previous years, when you asked players, you're doing well, what is the reason? And they would say this or that, but they would never mention the coach. This year, when you talk about, okay, well, what is the difference? How are you having such a good season? Players constantly mention Lane Lambert, especially early in the season when it was more novel. They're like, man, this guy's a really good coach. And it's something that I've noticed. It's something that other people have noticed, and it really stands out. They really seem to like and respect Lane Lambert, and there's a really good reason for that. He is an excellent coach. So you got a good coach. You got 2 goalies who are playing well. And if you got good goaltending and good coaching, you've got a real, not just like a minuscule shot. Like, you have a real shot. It is very possible that these models are wrong, because hockey is a really, really hard sport to predict. So, and that's why I try not to be super prescriptive or to pontificate too much about the stuff that comes out from my statistical models, because I understand, like, that's just one part of the game. You have to watch the games, you have to understand the context, you have to understand everything that's going on. So, well, they are back in action tomorrow against Colorado. It would be the most Kraken thing in the world to beat Colorado and then lose to Vancouver on the Saturday. Well, that does it for today's episode, and that does it for Locked On Kraken. Make sure you subscribe and follow us so you get all the latest episodes. You can find us at Davy Jones LR on all social media platforms, or at DavyJonesLockerRoom.com, where we do print coverage of the Seattle Torrent and Seattle Kraken. If you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Kraken ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. For those of you on video, we send you over to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make sure this is one of your 2 daily listens. For Davy Jones Locker Room, I'm Zaiem.
And on behalf of the podcast that is never crufty, I'm Glenn Dreyfuss.
Never crufty. We'll see you tomorrow.